Hi, guys. Welcome to the Let Go, Let God podcast. I'm your host, Erika Ray, and I'm so happy you decided to tune in today. I just got done recording last week's episode. I usually don't record episodes back to back, but because Thanksgiving is here, I wanted to make sure I had some extra content because Kaden and I are going out of town. So I went to coffee this morning, which if you watched the first episode, you'll hear me talk about that. And then I came home and recorded my episode about Saul/Paul. And then I was so hungry. I felt like I wasn't thinking and talking properly. And I don't know, I just feel like my brain does not properly work when I haven't eaten or slept, which I know is a very normal human bodily thing, but it's like extreme in me. And anyways, after I recorded that, I ate one of those Chomps beef sticks, and then I literally passed out on the couch for at least an hour. It felt like 2, but I think it ended up being an hour. And I had planned on recording this next episode. And Kaden had come home and was asking me all these questions about groceries, which I really don't like grocery shopping. It's my least favorite chore. I get very overwhelmed. I think I've said this before, but I have a lot of health issues, and so sometimes when I have to think about what to eat for groceries, I'm so limited, and so I have to make a lot of decisions, and I just don't like doing that. Anyways, he's trying to ask me questions about that, and I'm just so groggy. So I end up falling asleep. I wake up, there's a football game going. He went to the grocery store. I'm still waking up, but I need to get this done. So it's actually perfect timing. I'm grateful that the Lord gave me that hour of rest. And it's so rainy and gloomy outside, which I actually like because we don't really get that a lot here in Arizona, but it makes me sleepy. So anyways, I'm hoping this will wake me up because I need to get up and keep doing things. I haven't really done much today. I woke up, went to the gym, made breakfast, went to get a drink with my friend at coffee/tea, and then I came home and recorded and then fell asleep. So anyways, we're on week 8 of our series talking about top biblical leaders in the Bible. Top biblical leaders, I guess I didn't need to say in the Bible. Bear with me. And this week we're going to talk about Deborah. She was a judge and prophetess who led Israel to victory. Her key traits were wisdom, business, and spiritual insight. We will be focused on Judges 4 as I go through this. It's such a good story, so tune in and enjoy as I kind of recap. So the story starts out with Deborah, the prophet, who was judging Israel at the time, which is very uncommon because females were not typically in charge. And the Israelites would go to her for judgment. So just like we have judges now, this is what it looked like back then. She was a judge back then. She would sit under this specific palm tree called the Palm of Deborah, and it was located between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. This is a very special place because it's where people could gather and disputes could be heard publicly, and Deborah would use her spiritual and biblical knowledge and judge them properly. So people went, they presented their case to her. She listened carefully, she sought wisdom from the Lord, and then she gave a ruling or counsel. One day, Deborah told a man named Barak, he was a military general. She told him that God of Israel commands him to call out 10,000 warriors from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun at Mount Tabor, and she will call out Sisera along with his chariots and warriors to the Kishon River, and God would give Barak victory. So essentially, Deborah's going to Barak and telling him, hey, you need to gather these troops. There's going to be a war. I'm going to gather these troops, and the Lord's going to give you victory. So Barak said, yeah, I'll go, but only if you, Deborah, go with me. him saying this kind of shows that he trusted human strength more than God's promise. I have definitely been in this position where I have been called to do something and I'm like, okay, I'll do it, but I don't want to go alone. Like, will you go with me? It's very comforting to have another human do something with you. I used to be the girl that always needed somebody with me to do something. And then I went through a period where the Lord really pruned me and helped me learn how to do things independently with Him. And that was really cool. I personally think it's more fun to do things with people, but I don't have this fear of not being able to do things alone anymore, which was basically crippling. And I wouldn't even do certain things a lot because of this fear. So anyways, Deborah said, yeah, Barak, I'll go with you. But then she said, the Lord's victory over Sisera will be at the hands of a woman. So, little sneak peek, this woman that she's talking about is actually not herself. So we'll get into that. So she's saying, yeah, I'll go with you, but the victory is not going to be because of you. It's going to be because of a woman, which ultimately we know the victory is going to be because of God. But she's just referencing that there's going to be another woman in play that is going to help gain victory. So kind of as I mentioned before, with Deborah being a female prophetess, it's not a typical thing. Military glory always went to the male commander. By giving it to a woman, God flipped cultural expectations and emphasized that He is the one who brings glory and shows that He can use anyone. So Deborah saying that the victory was going to come through a woman is just flipping those cultural expectations. And it's another way that we are seeing victory through the Lord versus through a human. Because typically women were not going to gain the victory. It was always male. And ultimately, again, we know God is the one who gives us all the victory. So Sisera and his army started to attack. And then Barak chased the chariots and the enemy army killed all of the warriors. I didn't mention this. Sisera, the leader of the army, before that happened, he leaped down from his chariot and escaped on foot. So Sisera, the leader, got away, but all of his army warriors died. So Sisera went and ran to the tent of Jael. Her name is Jael, Jael. She was the wife of Heber the Kenite. And Sisera was like, I'll be safe here because Heber was on friendly terms with Israel's oppressors. So Jael went out to meet Sisera and said, hey, come into my tent, sir. Don't be afraid. He went into her tent and she covered him with a blanket. He asked for some water and she gave him some milk and he just got cozy and fell right asleep. So Jael went and quietly crept up to him with a hammer and a tent peg in her hand. She drove the tent peg through his temple and into the ground, and he died. Not a good way to go out. He was sleeping, so I wonder if he felt anything or how much he felt, but it's pretty brutal. Barak came around looking for Sisera, and Jael took him into the tent with the crime scene. She showed him what happened. On that day, Israel saw God defeat Jabin, the Canaanite king, and Israel became stronger and stronger against King Jabin until they finally destroyed him. So, it's a short but sweet story. What I'm realizing as I'm going through this series is that a lot of these stories are pretty short and sweet, but there's so much to be unpacked in here. So I'm going to go over some quick summary points of this story just to recap, and then I'm going to go over another thing that I kind of felt led to talk about. So, a recap of the story. We have Deborah, who's a woman in a male-dominated society. She was Israel's leader and prophetess. Barak hesitated, but went into battle when Deborah said God commanded it. Jael, a woman not part of the army, delivered the final blow to Sisera. Deborah guided Barak and encouraged Israel, but she also painted out reality, how the honor will not be his. Israel suffered under King Jabin's oppression, but God delivered victory through his people. And then Israel's army had to gather, obey, and trust God's plan to win the battle. Jael, a woman outside Israel's army, received honor for her courage and faithfulness. And that's kind of the recap. Which, again, this is only in Judges 4. So, again, it's such a short chapter, but this story is wild. And I think I've mentioned this before too, but history was never my strong suit. And so reading the Old Testament was kind of hard for me because it was a lot of historical things. I mean, the whole Bible is, obviously. But I enjoyed the New Testament more because it gave real life lessons and applicable things that I could take into my everyday life. And I was just having a really hard time with reading the stories and understanding them. And I really would pray into asking God to help me in that area, and He showed up. And now I love learning about the history and the stories. And sometimes there are stories that are a little harder to get through, and I have to pray for the knowledge and strength to kind of make it through those. But for the most part, I really am excited. I'm like, ooh, who do I get to read about next? So I wanted to share something. I remember years ago, I had a friend ask me, why is it so important to read and study the Bible stories? And at that point in my life, I had learned the stories whenever I was a kid. You know, I learned all the Bible stories in Sunday school. And I believed in God, but I wasn't truly doing everything to walk with Him. So honestly, I didn't feel equipped to have the proper answer. And it kind of made me think like, yeah, why do we need to know them? Because we should just focus on the New Testament and focus on, what we're supposed to be doing now versus like what happened in the past. And that's literally where my brain went. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, Erika, you're so silly. Like, you could have had such a great answer to give this person. But I just hadn't studied properly. So I didn't get to give it. But now I can give that lesson. So I have a couple things to say about why the Bible stories are very important. So, number one, they reveal God's character. Whenever we are learning stories about somebody, we see God in all of them. And it is just the coolest thing. We see God in these people's character, and we get to see Him shine. Like, just whenever a friend tells you like a testimony or a story about their life, you can see God's character in that, which is so cool. And that's what He wants to show from before, just putting all these things in a book for us to read, to see more of His character. I have learned to love God so much more after reading His word. And, praying and communing is so great, but truly just sitting down and reading these stories has shown me, wow, God is so good. He was with these people and He's still with us to this day because He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So that's the first thing, is the Bible stories reveal God's character, and I want to know more about God's character. All right, the next thing is that the Bible stories teach timeless life lessons. I've kind of gone through these stories and have shared some really cool life lessons with you guys and how we can take away from those and what we can learn and how we cannot repeat the same mistakes. And they're timeless. We can continue to talk about them with other people. And the cool thing is that they're all factual and true. We don't have to worry about word of mouth stories from other people, which are also great, but they're all in the same book. We can find them in the same place, and we can share them with every generation that comes by. And that's the beautiful thing about the Bible, is it's the only constant thing in this life. So we can share that with confidence, knowing like this is so good for somebody else to read and talk about and learn and all the things. I think all the time about a lot of the mistakes that I've made, and I think about how I'm grateful that I can share mistakes with other people so that hopefully they don't have to make the same ones. And sometimes I feel like I need to personally go through things in order to, know that I shouldn't be doing that. But honestly, it's not true. And I don't want to have to go through things to know that I shouldn't do them. I would love to just continue to read through the Bible and learn from other people's mistakes so that I don't have to make them. But truthfully, I'm not going to never make any mistakes. I'm going to have to learn some of my own mistakes. But as much as I can learn from the Bible or from other people as well, I'm going to take it. So I think that, whenever people are like, I needed to go through that to learn, I do think that's true because I've said that before. But I do think that there's a lot of things we can learn without having to actually go through them. But I do think there's something really special about going through something yourself and having that personal transformation. It's different versus just hearing something. But there's a lot of things that, I can take trusted people's word, like the Bible or a good mentor or, parents, stuff like that. So number 2 is they teach timeless life lessons. Number 3, the Bible stories connect us to God's plan. We learn about all of God's plans in the past, and I feel like they really can connect us to God's plan for us right now in our lives. They can connect us to God's plan in any point of life that we're in, which is super cool. So being able to read through the stories can really connect us to the big picture of what God is doing. No matter what you're going through, whether it's a great season, a hard season, all the things, the Bible can just really speak with you, and the story specifically can help you see the big picture, because a lot of the times these people don't understand the big picture. Like just what we read in Saul's story last week, God just told him to get up and go to the city, but Saul didn't know what he was going to do whenever he got there. So they can kind of connect us to the bigger picture and just taking that one faithful step towards the next. Number 4, the Bible stories are important because they shape our faith and decision making. We can grow our faith when we learn more about these people. We can always relate back to them and remember how God got them through these situations, and even think about how they made decisions. Like, remember when Nehemiah would just pray and pray and pray every single time he faced any type of opposition, or even when anything good was happening, and then he made his decision. So I think it's just such a great example of how we should be making our decisions. Number 5, the Bible stories inspire hope and courage. We can see how all these people got through these challenging times, and it gives us that hope that God can help us get through our challenging times. Today I was driving and I was thinking, and I felt slightly convicted because I say my prayers a lot in the car as I'm driving all around, because I tend to drive a lot, and a lot of times I'm asking God for this to go well, and for this to go well, and for this thing to work out. I'm like, okay, Lord, please give me a smooth coffee date, or like a smooth day at work, or help this podcast to go well, or help our small group to go well. I'm always praying for these things to go smoothly, and I have this hope that, okay, God's going to make it go smoothly. And I do want that to happen, but more so, I felt like the Lord was telling me, I need you to pray for your heart posture more than the event to run smooth, because more often than not, there's going to be so many things that happen that do not run smoothly. And I can definitely get flustered whenever my plan does not go smoothly. And I get really in my head about it, and it can sometimes ruin my day. I don't want to be like that, but sometimes it can. And I've noticed those days when I'm feeling really good and filled with the Spirit, and then a little hiccup happens and I'm like, whatever, versus those days where it's like this tiny little thing happens, like I spill my drink on me or whatever, and then it just feels like the end of the world. I think one of my least favorite things is when I try to be very efficient with my time and get all these things done, and then there's too much traffic or there's a line that's taking forever. That's when I really am tested with my patience, because I like to be very efficient with my time, and whenever something takes longer than expected, I get frustrated because I'm like, oh, I'm losing time. Like it's not even that it's taking me a long time. It's just, I think about, oh my gosh, I'm losing time, and then I need to do this, this, and this. And that is really where I need help in that area. And so anyways, I think that it's very good to just pray over asking for God to change your heart and for him to give you the strength and the courage and the hope to make it through certain situations versus asking for the situations to go well. I think that it's good to combine the prayers. Like, I want to always pray that events go smoothly, but I also want to pray that the Lord guides me in the events no matter what's going to happen. And so I really am challenged to kind of switch up my prayers in that. So that was just kind of like my own little challenge. So the last thing I want to say is that the Bible stories are important because they strengthen our relationship with God. We kind of just went over all of this, but learning more about how the Lord has worked in other people's lives really, really strengthens our relationship with God. I have a friend who, again, I just had coffee with her this morning, and she told me how she loves listening to testimonies of people who have overcome all these things. And she was just talking, and she didn't specifically say they strengthen her relationship with God, but the way that she was talking about them, and well, actually, I think she did, now that I'm thinking about it. But you just hear about all these stories, and it's so inspiring, and then it just makes you feel closer and in awe of God. And so I think hearing about these miracles and hard things that these people got through, or even, truthfully, even the challenging things that maybe people didn't fully get through, but they had God by their side the whole entire time, like, those are amazing things still, and it's really great to strengthen our relationship. I always think about Paul, who had the thorn in his side, is what the Bible says, but we never really know what that thorn was, and it never went away, but he still did so much with his life. And sometimes that's encouraging to me because I have things that I've struggled with for so many years, and I'm like, okay, God, I don't know if this is going to go away, but even if it doesn't, my hope and my trust is still in you, and I can still live a full, happy life, even with a thorn in my side. Like, please take it away, but I still can live a good life. So those are kind of some things I wanted to touch on why the Bible stories are important, just in case you ever wondered, or sometimes it's hard whenever you hear the same stories over and over and over again. You're like, yeah, I know. Like, I know the story about Deborah and the tent peg and Jael, and then I know the story about David and Goliath, and I know the story about Saul turning into Paul, and then I know the story about Nehemiah, and I know the story about Jesus Christ and Moses and all those things, but I think it's so cool because we can dive into them more and more and learn all these cool things about them, because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but when you read the Bible, you go through different seasons of life, and it always seems to speak to you in that exact season that you're in, which is the beautiful thing about the word, because it is alive and true. So that's basically the wrap for today. I have 2 more podcasts in this series, and I want to see who we're going over because I don't remember. Okay, so week 9 will be about Joshua, and week 10 will be about Peter. And then we'll be wrapping up this series, and we will be having some more guests come on the podcast, and I'll have some more episodes with Kaden, and we'll kind of get into some more topics that we can kind of look at in a more biblical perspective. I feel like that is where my strength is at. I don't really feel like my strength is here talking about the Bible stories, to be honest, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to do it and I don't want to get better at it. It's just something that I have to stretch myself in, which is sometimes why these episodes are a little bit shorter. I realize that when I have guests on my podcast, the episodes are like an hour long, and then when it's just me talking about anything, it's always like 30 minutes, because sometimes it's challenging for me to sit here and just talk. But when I have somebody else, I can like bounce off them and banter with them. So anyways, that's all I got for today. Make sure you tune in next week, and have happy holidays. 'Tis the season to have all the fun and look at all the Christmas lights. Bye.